"Don't you dare tell me what I can or can't do in my own house," she snapped one night, her voice sharp like the crack of a whip. That sentence still echoes in my skull because it was the moment my gut screamed louder than my heart. But let me rewind. Because to understand how I ended up sitting in my darkened living room, watching hidden camera feeds like a man spying on his own life, you have to know who I was before suspicion turned me into something I swore I'd never become. My name's Daniel Carter. I'm 38 years old, born and raised in Garland, Texas, just outside of Dallas. If you'd met me 5 years ago, you'd have pegged me for your average suburban guy. F-150 in the driveway, Cowboys jersey on Sundays, backyard grill smoking on the weekends. I worked steady hours as a field technician for a security systems company, which meant I was always tinkering with cameras, alarms, and access panels. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me a sense of control over chaos. Maybe that's the irony. I spent my days making sure other people's homes were safe, while mine was slowly rotting from the inside. Back then, though, I didn't see it. I thought I was lucky. I met Melissa in the most all-American way possible, at a Friday night football game. I was 29, she was 25, both of us in the bleachers at a high school rivalry game, even though neither of us had kids playing. We were just there for nostalgia, cheap nachos, and the band's halftime show. She dropped her soda on the concrete steps. It splattered across my boots, and when she bent to apologize, I caught her smile under the glare of those field lights. Something about her laugh, it cut right through me. Within 6 months, we were inseparable. Diners at 2 a.m., road trips with Springsteen blasting, summer cookouts where she'd steal the spatula from me just to mess with my perfect burgers. I still remember our first Christmas together. She bought me a Dallas Cowboys grill set, tongs, spatula, even a meat thermometer with the logo, and I thought, this woman knows me better than I know myself. Our wedding in Austin 2 years later wasn't fancy. Backyard tent, rented speakers, barbecue catering, Bud Light, and buckets of ice. My buddies joked that I'd won the lottery. And in those early years, I believed them. Melissa was sharp, ambitious, always dressed like she was headed to a magazine shoot, even if it was just Kroger. She worked in marketing, talked about brand strategy the way some folks talk about scripture. I didn't always get it, but I loved how driven she was. She made me feel like our life had momentum. And for a while, things were good. We bought a modest 3-bedroom in a quiet cul-de-sac. I fixed up the garage, turned it into half workshop, half man cave. She decorated the inside like a Pinterest board. Candles, throw pillows, those farmhouse signs with corny quotes like, "Bless this mess." Neighbors waved when we mowed the lawn, we hosted game nights, and for all I knew, I was living the American dream. But dreams don't crack all at once. They fracture slowly. It started small. Melissa used to tell me everything. Her coworkers' drama, her frustrations with clients, even what she had for lunch. Then, little by little, the stories got shorter. I'd ask about her day and she'd shrug. It was fine. Just that. Fine. Her phone, once left on the counter without a second thought, became glued to her. Face down, always on silent. At first, I told myself I was paranoid. Everyone's entitled to privacy, but the signs kept piling. She started dressing different, not just stylish, but calculated. Tight blouses, skirts she hadn't worn since her 20s, perfume strong enough to linger in the air after she'd walked out the door. New client, she'd say, gotta look sharp. Then came the late nights. We're finalizing a campaign, she told me. Can't slack off now. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but a part of me felt like I was standing in our kitchen, staring at a puzzle with pieces missing. One night I drove by her office on the way home from a service call. Lights were off, parking lot empty. Her car wasn't there. When I asked later, she swore she was inside working on the second floor, probably after you drove past. Her tone was clipped, defensive, and for the first time in our marriage, I caught myself smiling politely while inside my brain whispered, "She's lying." I tried to shake it off. I threw myself into chores, fixed up the deck, even volunteered for more overtime, just to stay distracted. But every time she walked through the door, smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine, or every time she laughed at her phone and quickly hid the screen, the knot in my stomach grew tighter. The breaking point, or maybe the beginning of it, came during a Sunday cookout. We had neighbors over, burgers sizzling, country music low on the Bluetooth speaker. Melissa's phone buzzed, and she jumped like it was a grenade. She excused herself, stepping into the side yard. I followed with a beer in my hand. casual, like I just wanted to check the propane. From a few feet away, I heard her voice. Soft. Almost tender. I miss you too. I'll figure it out. When she saw me, her face froze. She laughed it off. Oh, it was just Jen from work. But Jen doesn't make you say I miss you too. That night, after everyone left, I asked straight up who she was talking to. She rolled her eyes, said I was paranoid, accused me of trying to control her. That was the night she snapped at me in the kitchen, slamming a cabinet shut and spitting, "Don't you dare tell me what I can or can't do in my own house." I should have shouted back. I should have demanded the truth. But instead, something colder settled in me. Maybe it was my line of work. Maybe it was instinct. But a voice inside said, "If you want the truth, don't ask. Watch." The next morning, while she was at work, I pulled out the extra gear I kept in the garage. Motion-activated cams, tiny enough to hide in air vents, clock radios, even a decorative picture frame. I told myself it was about peace of mind, just until I knew for sure. But deep down, I already knew. By that evening, the house I once called home was wired like a fortress. Every corner, every angle, living room, kitchen, hallway, even the garage. I left one blind spot, our bedroom. I wasn't ready to desecrate that space, not yet. That first night, I sat alone on the couch, laptop glowing, watching my own house on split screens. Melissa came home late, kissed me on the cheek like always, made small talk, and disappeared into the shower. On the feed, I saw her phone light up on the counter. A message. The preview line flashed, "Can't stop thinking about last night." And that was when I realized my life was about to change forever. The first few nights after I wired the house, I tried to convince myself that maybe I'd overreacted, maybe nothing would come of it, and I'd feel stupid later for playing amateur detective in my own living room. But that text preview, "Can't stop thinking about last night," burned into my brain like neon on a dark road. I didn't open her phone that night. I just stared at that glowing notification, then watched her walk back into the kitchen, fresh from the shower, towel drying her hair like nothing in the world was wrong. That was the moment my suspicion hardened into purpose. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't insecure, I was being played. The feeds became my obsession. My laptop was open every evening, split into quadrants: kitchen, living room, hallway, garage. I'd sit there pretending to watch ESPN, but my real eyes were locked on those tiny live windows. For the first few days, nothing happened. Melissa was careful, too careful. She'd cook dinner, scroll through her phone, sometimes step into the backyard to talk quietly, always with her back turned to the camera, always out of earshot. Then Thursday came. I got home from work a little earlier than usual, logged into the system, and froze. There she was, in the kitchen, not knowing she was being recorded, pouring herself a glass of wine in the middle of the afternoon. Her phone buzzed, she picked it up, smiled in that way you only smile when you're talking to someone who makes your stomach flip. "I'll tell him I have a client meeting," she said, laughing softly. "Don't worry, he never suspects." My knuckles went white on the armrest. She lied so easily it was like second nature. That same evening she walked in the door at 7, holding a briefcase, sighing like she'd been slaving at the office. She even apologized. "Sorry, babe, late client call ran long." Meanwhile, the footage sat right there on my hard drive, time-stamped, proving her words were a complete fabrication. I didn't confront her, not yet. I needed more than a single call. I needed undeniable, crushing evidence. So I started cataloging. Every suspicious moment got clipped and stored in a folder on an external drive, each file labeled with date and time. Tuesday at 14 p.m., kitchen call. Thursday 5:02 p.m., wine call. It felt cold, methodical, like I was building a case for trial, and in some ways, I was. The props started stacking up too. One Friday, I checked our joint credit card statement online. There it was, a $237 charge at a Marriott downtown. That same night, Melissa swore she was at a networking dinner with her boss. Funny, I thought, how networking required a king-size bed. Then came the gas receipt. I was cleaning out her car, at her request no less, when a folded slip fluttered from the passenger seat visor. I unfolded it. Gas station 2 towns over, time-stamped midnight, a weeknight when she'd claimed to be working late. That was no commute, that was a rendezvous. The more I dug, the less I recognized my own wife. It was like peeling wallpaper and finding rot behind the walls. Melissa, who once used to text me, "I love you" at random, Now type those words to someone else. Melissa, who used to spend Sundays curled up on the couch in sweats, now claimed self-care days that somehow aligned with hotel charges and unexplained mileage. I synced my iPad to our iCloud just to see if her messages would trickle in. They did. At least the ones she hadn't deleted fast enough. One night, as she showered, my iPad lit up with a message. "Last night was incredible. Wish we could do it again tonight." My stomach turned so violently I had to sit down. I started timing her stories against reality. She'd say, "Traffic was brutal tonight, but the cameras showed her slipping into the house at the exact same time every evening. No traffic, just rehearsed lines." She claimed she had lunch with coworkers, yet the receipts I found in the trash were for 2 steakhouse dinners, bottles of wine. No coworkers sign receipts with hearts instead of signatures. Every new discovery was a blade in the back, but also a strange sort of fuel. The more evidence I stacked, the calmer I became. The denial was gone. I wasn't imagining things. I had hard proof. Then came the moment I can't erase. The moment suspicion shattered into reality. It was a Tuesday night. Melissa told me she was working late, finalizing a presentation. I kissed her cheek as she left, told her to knock it out of the park. Then I opened my laptop. At 7:42 p.m., the garage cam flickered to life. Her car pulled in. Not alone. A man stepped out of the passenger side. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a button-down. He followed her into the house like he belonged there. My chest went numb. The living room feed confirmed it. They laughed as they set down takeout bags. She poured him wine. He sat on our couch, my couch, and kicked his shoes off like he'd done it before. Melissa leaned against him, head on his shoulder, eyes shining in a way I hadn't seen in years. I wanted to scream, to smash the laptop, to drive home and drag him out by the collar, but I didn't. I sat frozen, watching in silence as they ate dinner like newlyweds in my home. Every detail was seared into me, the way she touched his arm, the way he wiped sauce from her lip, the way she whispered something that made him grin. When they kissed, my hands shook so violently the laptop nearly slid off my knees. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This wasn't a hunch. This was betrayal in high definition, time-stamped, and recorded from 3 different angles. I slammed the laptop shut, heart pounding. For a long time, I just sat there in the dark, staring at the blank screen, listening to the hum of the fridge. My ears rang like I'd just walked away from an explosion. That night, Melissa came home past midnight, smelling faintly of cologne and wine. She slid into bed beside me, murmuring, "Long day." I stared at the ceiling, silent. I had seen the truth, and she had no idea. The next morning, I poured coffee like nothing was wrong, kissed her on the forehead as she left for work. But in my gut, I knew. The time for gathering evidence was over. The time for confrontation was coming, and when it came, I wouldn't just have suspicions or half-truths, I'd have the full weight of proof, enough to crush every denial she could muster. The day finally came when silence wasn't enough. Every morning I woke up with that tight knot in my chest. Every night I went to bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the footage in my head. The evidence wasn't going anywhere, and neither was the betrayal. I decided, no, I resolved, to confront Melissa in a way that left no room for gaslighting, no room for lies. But I wouldn't do it at home. That had been her playground. I needed witnesses. I needed context. I needed power. I chose a place she couldn't control, her office. Well, technically, it was the conference room at her law firm. A glass-walled arena where every word was transparent, literally. I called the receptionist, told her I needed to speak with Melissa urgently, and that this wasn't negotiable. I could hear the whispers in the hallway as she arrived, heels clicking against the polished floors, hair perfectly coiled, makeup impeccable, completely unaware of the storm waiting for her. I didn't greet her with accusations at first. Instead, I led her to the conference room and motioned for her to sit, her brow furrowed. "What's this about?" she asked, a hint of annoyance in her voice. "I'm busy, James. Big meeting in 20. I placed a folder on the table between us, thick, bulging, labeled evidence. She raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" "Proof," I said, keeping my tone neutral, almost clinical. "Everything you've been hiding." Her expression faltered for the first time. A flash of panic? Maybe. I didn't give her a chance to breathe. I opened the folder, pulled out the first printout. Time-stamped hotel receipts, credit card charges, GPS data from her car showing exact trips at exact times. I laid them carefully, one by one, like cards in a courtroom. She leaned forward, scanning, eyes widening, lips parting in disbelief. "This isn't real," she whispered. "James, you can't, this is private." "I can," I said softly. "I didn't want to believe it either, but now I know you've been seeing him. In our house, in hotels, lying to me every step of the way." Her voice rose, trembling. "You went through my things, my messages, that's illegal." "Not any more than what you've done to our marriage," I countered, calm but cold. "You lied, you cheated, and now you'll face the consequences." She laughed, bitterly, trying to mask fear with scorn. "Consequences? You think printing a few receipts and iMessages changes anything? You're overreacting, James. We were just having fun." "Fun?" The word made my stomach twist. Fun while I worked late nights, fun while I planned anniversaries, fun while I trusted her with my life. I slid a USB drive across the table. "Watch the videos. Every lie, every kiss, every moment in our living room that you thought I didn't see." Melissa froze. Her fingers hovered over the device, as if touching it could burn her. Then she did. She plugged it into her laptop, opened the first file. The room fell silent except for the soft click of play. The footage played out like a movie. Our living room, our couch, our wine glasses, our laughter, hers with someone else. Her expression crumbled in real time, pale, trembling. She didn't need to ask, she couldn't deny. I stayed silent, letting the footage speak. The way he wiped sauce from her lip, the way she leaned into him. It wasn't romantic fiction, it was documentary. Her gasps, her whispered words, caught on camera. They were the soundtrack of her betrayal. A small part of me wanted to turn away, to leave the room and let her wallow in her shame, but I couldn't. I had invested too much. I had to see this to the end. Then she spoke, voice cracking. "James, I didn't mean—" "You didn't mean?" I repeated, my tone sharp, slicing through her excuses. "You meant to lie. You meant to sneak. You meant to betray me, and you did." Her hands shook as she closed the laptop. I was unhappy. You were unhappy?" I leaned forward, fingers tapping the table, slow and deliberate. "You had me. You had everything. You wanted more. Outside of us. Outside of me." Her eyes filled with tears, but there was no apology, just a plea, a desperate attempt at damage control. "Please, James, let's work through this. I can explain." I shook my head, almost sadly. "Explain? You think there's an explanation that makes this okay?" She slumped back, realizing words wouldn't save her. Then came the humiliating part. I had invited someone else. Not for revenge, not for entertainment, but for truth. Karen, our mutual friend, had been quietly standing in the hallway, waiting for the opportune moment. She stepped in, arms crossed, eyes like steel. Melissa's jaw dropped. "Karen, what are you—" Karen didn't answer. She simply held up a tablet, showing her own evidence. Screenshots of Melissa sending flirty texts to him, promises of secret dinners, weekend getaways. Melissa's face drained of color. She realized then that the betrayal wasn't just against me. It was out in the open, witnessed, undeniable. The humiliation settled like a fog. I wanted her to feel it, not for pleasure, but for the clarity of truth. She had chosen deceit. She had chosen secrecy. Now, she couldn't hide. Melissa's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, panic in her eyes. Another text from him. "Can't wait to see you tonight." I grabbed the phone gently. "No more," I said. And then, as if on cue, the office intercom buzzed. Our lawyer, standing by in the lobby for an unrelated matter, walked in just to see the scene. Witnesses, evidence, confession, the perfect storm. Her face crumpled completely. No more gaslighting, no more excuses, just truth, undeniable and raw. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a strange mix of vindication and sorrow. This wasn't fun. It wasn't revenge porn theatrics. This was reality. And reality, for Melissa, was merciless. Then came the final sound, a soft click. The USB had one more folder. I opened it. Another angle from the living room camera, the kitchen, time-stamped at 11:17 p.m. Same day, same man, same betrayal. But this time, it caught something else. A small frame of our child's drawing on the fridge, hearts and stick figures, completely oblivious to the deceit unfolding around them. Melissa's eyes shifted to the drawing. She gasped. She had betrayed more than me. She had betrayed the trust, the innocence, the foundation of our life. She covered her face, sobbing, collapsing into herself. I didn't gloat. I didn't yell. I just sat there, letting the silence of consequence settle. Karen nodded once, silently. I didn't need words. Melissa understood. Everyone understood. I left the office that day carrying only one thing: the knowledge that truth had been revealed. No more lies, no more guessing, no more shadows. The confrontation was over. The world had seen her choices. And now the next chapter, the aftermath, the healing, was inevitable. Because sometimes, seeing is believing. And sometimes, believing is surviving. The weeks after the confrontation were surreal. Melissa didn't speak to me unless it was through lawyers, and even then, her words were measured, cold, defensive. I moved into the guest house on the property, a small 2-bedroom with a creaking floor and a view of the backyard where our kids used to play every summer. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine now. A place free from deception, free from the tension that had poisoned every corner of our home. Divorce papers arrived in a neat stack, stamped and binding. I read each one carefully, every clause underlined in my mind. Melissa wanted to fight custody, to fight alimony, to fight everything. I did not expect otherwise, but I had done my homework. The cameras, the receipts, the documented betrayals, they weren't just digital whispers anymore. They were undeniable proof, legally admissible, irrefutable. My attorney, an older man from Dallas who wore suspenders and a permanent scowl, nodded as I walked him through the files. "You've got her," he said simply. "She can try to spin it, but the court sees everything, and they'll care about the kids first." The court hearings were draining but oddly cathartic. Watching Melissa in a crisp black suit, lips pressed tight, trying to maintain composure while the judge calmly outlined her betrayal, was almost poetic. Every hotel receipt, every credit card charge, every time-stamped message was laid bare. I watched as the gavel fell with authority, each thump like punctuation to the life I had lived under her deception. Custody was split, but primary residence with me. Assets were divided, fair but favoring the spouse who had remained honest. And in that room, for the first time in months, I felt peace. Returning home to the main house for the first time after the hearings was surreal. It smelled of our past, the lingering aroma of coffee from early mornings, the faint scent of her perfume that now felt intrusive, almost insulting in its familiarity. I walked through each room slowly, touching the counter edges, lifting the blinds, imagining life without the constant veil of lies. I sat at the dining table, the same one where we had hosted countless dinners with friends and family, and for the first time in years, it felt like mine. Healing didn't happen overnight. The first morning, I made pancakes for the kids, thick, golden, drizzled with syrup, and we ate in the backyard under the shade of the old oak tree. Laughter returned slowly, timid at first, then more confident as the days passed. ESPN played softly in the background, while we argued good-naturedly over football stats. The kids drew crayon masterpieces, taped them to the fridge, oblivious to the storm that had recently passed. These small, mundane moments were powerful medicine. Friends checked in, offering support, bringing dinners, sometimes just showing up to sit in silence. One night, while sipping a Bud Light on the front porch, watching the sun sink behind the horizon, I realized how much of life I had been missing while trapped in suspicion and betrayal. The world didn't stop. Life went on. And somehow, it was beautiful again. Melissa tried to contact me a few times. Emails, texts, even a brief phone call. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Her apologies, her explanations, her pleas, none of it could undo what had been done. And frankly, I didn't care. There was a strange liberation in letting go. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need closure from her. I needed peace for myself and my family. One evening, my youngest came running into the kitchen, holding up a crayon drawing. "Daddy, look! I drew us!" My chest tightened. Hearts, stick figures, a sun in the corner. Simple, innocent, perfect. I knelt down and hugged him, then looked at the fridge filled with drawings from both kids. These weren't just pictures. They were reminders of what mattered: trust, love, and the small joys of everyday life, far more powerful than any vindictive satisfaction. I took a long walk around the property, the gravel crunching under my boots. The neighbor's dog barked in the distance, and the evening breeze carried the smell of grass and late-blooming flowers. It was a simple, ordinary moment, but in that ordinariness was freedom. Freedom from deceit, freedom from manipulation, freedom from sleepless nights spent wondering what was true. The cameras? I left them in place for a while, not to spy, not to catch anyone else, but as a reminder of the lessons learned. Eventually, I disconnected them, storing the footage securely. a silent testament to a period of life that was over. No one needed to see it. I had seen enough. The evidence had served its purpose. Truth had been revealed, justice had been administered, and I could move forward. Months passed. The kids flourished in their routines. School, friends, soccer games, bedtime stories. I found new hobbies, small things to ground myself. Reading, cycling around the neighborhood, cooking elaborate dinners that were more about the process than the result. Life had texture again, and for the first time in years, I slept without tension clawing at my chest. One day I found myself laughing at a memory from the old house, a memory that would have once brought tears. Humor was healing too, absurd in its way, as if life was reminding me that pain could coexist with joy. I shared the story with a friend over a barbecue, and we both laughed until our sides hurt. Life was messy, yes, but it was still mine. In the quiet moments, when the house was still and the night pressed softly against the windows, I reflected on everything. Not just Melissa's betrayal, not just the confrontation, not even the courtroom battles, but the lessons hidden in the chaos. Vigilance, self-respect, the importance of small joys, and above all, the ability to reclaim one's life without bitterness. Sometimes, when I walk through the backyard, I see the kids playing, hear their laughter echoing against the old oak tree, and I smile. The past exists, yes, but it doesn't define the present. I have custody, stability, and a family that is learning, slowly but surely, to trust again. The house, once a theater of deception, is now a sanctuary of routine, warmth, and simple happiness. And as the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the lawn, I sip my beer, watch the kids' silhouettes dance in the fading light, and remind myself of a simple truth, one that is both comforting and brutally American in its bluntness. Sometimes, the trash takes itself out. No need for grand gestures, no need for public revenge. Life will do that for you. You just need to survive it, and eventually, you'll thrive again.